All right, ladies and gentlemen. Again, we are so glad to see you here this evening with us. My name again is Angela Crawford, and I'm here with Sister Karen Williams. I'm just
Good
letting
evening,
folks in
everybody.
the waiting room. Thank you. So, again, tonight we are presenting Black Joy and Afrofuturism, redefining our identity as an act of resistance.
Okay, before we begin, we would like to make sure we do our land acknowledgement. If you could take a moment of silence, please. We acknowledge that the land on which we gather are the ancestral lands of the Lenape people, whose presence and resilience in Pennsylvania continues to this day. We take this opportunity to honor the original caretakers of this land and recognize that the histories of theft, violence, erasures, and oppression that has brought our institution and ourselves here.
This past February the 9th, 2022, we lost a pioneer of Afrofuturism, Sister Betty Davis, and we just wanted to honor her as she is now went to the ancestral realm. In African culture, we also pay libations, and we want to honor Sister Betty Davis this evening. If you do not know who she is, please make sure that you look her up and celebrate her life and contributions to Black culture, to Black music, to Black fashion, to just Black culture, and just looking who she is as an act of resistance, not letting anyone define her. So I wanted to pay homage to Sister Betty Davis today.
Okay, before we begin, just a couple house rules. Let's make sure that we try to keep our microphone up so that we can hear. We want to minimize the background noise at all times. If you could also rename yourself on your Zoom tag, make sure you include your full name as well as your pronouns, and the school that you represent or community organization that you represent. This is going to be an interactive presentation. We want to hear your voice. We want you guys to be encouraged to jump in, ask questions, make comments, and we want to be able to identify who you are. Thank you.
Karen, you want to start?
Sure. My name is Karen Williams. Karen Marie Williams. I go by my middle name. I am a proud literacy coach at the Munoz Marin Elementary School. I have been an educator overall for 17 years, but with the district on my 6 years. I currently just trying to make sure that I incorporate all that I have learned in the Africana PDs, as well as the information about cultivating geniuses into the curriculum. And I'm just so excited to be here today to talk about this topic, Black Joy, which is Black Joy and Afrofuturism, which is so dear to me. If you need to get in touch with me, my email is there, and we'll present this information again at the end. But I'm also proud to say that I am one of the school equity leaders at our school.
Hello again, I'm Angela Crawford. Most people just call me Angie. I am an educator of 25 years. I have walked in my purpose, and I'm still here remaining steadfast and holding down the fort as a revolutionary educator. I am a new assistant principal at Wagner Middle School, and I'm also a doctoral candidate at Grand Canyon University. I am in the last leg of this process, so I will be celebrating hopefully very much soon this summer. And if you need to get in contact with me, my email address is at the bottom. And again, it will be in the last page. Additionally, I've been doing this work around culturally relevant and responsive equity work. Just again, a revolutionary educator like all of my life, but in a very public setting for the last maybe 6 years. And I'm happy to do this work because it definitely feeds my soul to make sure that we can feed and nurture our students. Thank you for joining us.
All right, I just want to go over the agenda so you know what we're going to cover today. Our goal is right now, we did our welcome and introduction. Thank you to all those people who have participated in the chat. I love to see where people are from all over the city. People are telling us what they're doing at their schools. Thank you. We are excited that so many people have came out tonight. I know it's been a long day, but we are so excited and we want to make sure you guys feel this energy about Black joy and Afrofuturism. So we're going to also define Black joy as well as Afrofuturism so they work on a common definition. We want to talk about then identity as an act of resistance, right? And then we want to be able to talk about how you can activate your practice as an educator. And then we'll give you some time to collaborate and talk about some things in our breakout session, as well as just have an open dialogue for any outstanding questions and comments that people want to say.
Our objectives for this evening is one, again, define and join Afrofuturism, followed by our presentation as identity as an act of resistance, and analysis of cultivating genius framework by Dr. Goli Muhammad, and then again, some collaboration with discussions and breakout sessions as Karen just stated.
Okay, so we're looking out to see if you guys can participate in some questions. Our first question to you is, what do you think? What is your personal definition of Black joy? Let's see what you say in the chat. Let's put some answers in the chat. What is your personal definition of Black joy? And while people are putting some definitions into the chat and their thoughts, we're actually going to watch a quick video. Oh, you know, someone asked a question if we could get off of mute. If you would like to participate, if you raise your hand, use the raise your hand feature, I'll be more than happy to call on you and definitely allow your voice to be heard. Ish, we have a hand raised. If you want, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michelle Shu. I'm from Constitution High School. To me, Black joy is being able to look at myself and not accept what others say about me. Certain hairstyles, the way my body is, my skin color, how big my lips are, or how dark my skin is. That to me is Black joy, being able to be proud of what I look like in a mirror and what others see me as.
Wow, great response, Ruth. Are you happen to be a student in the school district of Philadelphia?
Yes.
All right, what school are you from?
Constitution High School.
Okay, good, welcome. Thank you for sharing your voice. Anybody else would like to make a comment? All right, we see some things in the chat. We talked about being affirmed as an authentic African-American woman. It's the embodiment of self-awareness in your cultural identity and be happy with who you are. Black joy is about self-love, appreciation of the culture, self-confidence is who you are. It says, to me, Black joy is embracing and appreciating Blackness. And then Gina chimed in and said, being happy in my own skin. Thank you guys for sharing and participating. Now we're going to watch a quick video just about Black joy.
Who's that tassel?
Get your seat.
Get in your seat. The milkman coming. Come on.
Hold up. Are these just some regular, degular Black people having a good time? We love to see it. Today's baggage, Black joy. Despite what the headlines might tell you, there's much joy to be experienced as a Black person. And while there is no single definition for Black joy, we know that the term is pretty much how it sounds. Black people of the diaspora experiencing joy, from the mundane to the ordinary. Black joy is everywhere. It's a collective experience and can even be an act of resistance. Today, Black joy is all the buzz, but the concept behind this happiness is nothing new. Black folks have been creating joy for themselves in all sorts of ways for centuries. Those fly cornrows? Black joy. The Black voters who showed up and showed out at the polls across the country and had a good time while doing it? That's Black joy too. And Whitney Houston hitting that high note during Super Bowl 25 back in 91? Oh yeah, that was absolutely Black joy. Even if you can't find its definition in Webster's dictionary, Black joy more than exists. And Black folks are calling it out when we see it, especially in a world that perpetuates Black trauma. In her 2016 film, 13th, Ava DuVernay chose to highlight Black joy with a Black joy sequence to parallel the documentary's overall heavy subject matter. In 2018, photographer Adrienne Waheed published a photo book entitled Black Joy and Resistance, which captured stunning images of Black joy and culture during events like Brooklyn's Afropunk Festival and the West Indian Day Parade. Black joy has even entered the hallowed halls of academia. Professor Andre Brock explores the subject in the digital space through his work Distributed Blackness, and says that we're seeing this phenomena really make waves on social media, largely as a response to racial battle fatigue, or the exhaustion that Black people feel from the onslaught of images of Black trauma.
That constant display of Black death in your social media feeds, a space which is supposed to be a space that uplifts you and connects you, can lead to fatigue. It can lead to depression and despair. I think in many ways, the repetition of those images has led people to be cynical about whether they can make any change.
Brock is an associate professor at Georgia Tech, who is also known for his pioneering research on Black Twitter.
You have to have moments of joy and find joy in your everyday life to be able to survive these moments of affront, these moments of injury and insult, right? And so I am deeply angry about the death of George Floyd. I'm angry about all those things, but there also is something that social media brings to us that allows us to not forget, but to simultaneously experience that joy and that anger in a way that helps us keep our humanity.
Black joy can be multidimensional and contextual. It can be resistance to oppression, but it doesn't have to be. During the 2020 uprisings, we saw Black joy manifest in the songs and dances of the protesters who stood up to the police killings of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. Amanda Gorman broke the internet when she recited The Hill We Climb at the 2021 inauguration, a poem that was a sharp criticism of the Capitol insurrection and a powerful representation of Black joy nonetheless.
Skinny Black girl, descended from slaves and raised by a single mother, can dream of becoming president.
Whether it's a
Okay.
Great, we had some more responses.
Go ahead, Karen.
Yeah, that's all right. We had a couple more responses in the chat that I would like to share about with their idea of Black joy. There's 3 that came up after. I think Black joy is your pride of being a Black person, like your hair is curly or not. You don't care what other people say about you. It's also being able to express myself without fear or being judged or criticized. And lastly, we had Black joy for me is being my own representation of Blackness and being able to be all aspects of who I am, aspire to be without restrictions or shame. Awesome. So I dropped a little link in the chat, everyone. If you guys can click on it, it's going to open you out to what we call a Padlet, where we guys can capture some of your thoughts and words that you have said about Black joy. And we really want you to be able to interact with it. There are 5 things that we're asking you to think about when you think about Black joy, and then we're going to share the book definitions, okay? So this Padlet kind of tells you these ideas. We say that Black joy is unique. We say that Black joy is a strategy. We say that Black joy can heal. We think that Black joy is radical. And lastly, we say that Black joy is, and that's something that you could possibly put your own spin on. Okay, so go ahead and access the chat at this time, the document in the chat, and see if you can interact with that.
So this is what the Padlet looks like. And if you're unable to access the Padlet, again, you can always put your answers in the chat if you are not at a space or a place where you can actually interact with the Padlet, we still want to encourage you to participate. Black joy is a strategy. Defiance, protection is defiance that also protects us. Black joy is me advocating for my, maybe I'm cut off here. Advocating for my, or advocating for me, maybe that's what it's supposed to be. Contagious,
I
yeah.
like that one, contagious.
And a coded science.
We'll give you guys a few more minutes, or about a minute or so. Thank you for interacting. I'm seeing some great responses.
People of color surviving. Black joys can heal everyone. Everyone. Laughter with my family is always healing. Countering limited traumatic narratives, refusing to adhere to white supremacy, pushing back against the racial injustice within institutions and systems, being a phoenix out of the ashes, we still move forward and grow. Ashe, heal us from our trauma. Broken people is being able to look, I gotta widen my screen something. Being able to look at sadness and fear and not afraid to look back at it and smile, accepting who I am, advocating for my people, meaningful. Yes.
Your responses are giving me black joy. Listen to me.
Yes.
Great.
Moving forward regardless. We always keep a positive mindset amidst putting on our armor as we enter society that wasn't built for us. Yes, we heal each other by being a community within one another. When drums are being played, when a sister gives you good advice, when Big Mama helps you with your children. Yes. That allows one to express their truths without fear.
As we're beginning,
life-giving.
I was going to say, is there anyone who wanted to come off of mute? Can we hear anyone's voice? Anybody want to raise their hand and talk about what they particularly wrote and uplift that? Feel free to raise your hand.
Rochelle is raising her hand.
I wrote is being able to look at sadness and fear and not be afraid to look back at it and smile. I wrote that because in history, with water hoses or dogs, it's okay to like give a snarky look and be like, oh, I'm still gonna smile anyway. I'm still gonna laugh, still gonna dance. You can't take it from me.
Absolutely. That's right. Keeping that resilience and that determination, understanding that we know where we are, but I'm not going to let it stop my joy. Absolutely. I want to give snaps to the crowd for such wonderful responses. And we appreciate all of this. You coming off the mic, you add into the Padlet, you add into the chat. We appreciate that all. We now would like to share the definition that we're going to use to define Black joy in this presentation today. Black joy is an extension of agency, resistance, and perseverance. Its purpose is to counter the acts of white oppression and power. Black joy is a liberation and radical project that defies oppressive structures of time. Black joy as Black history encompasses narratives that offer knowledge about Black culture that are not focused on hardships, but sustaining Black people's spirit. While joy can infer happiness, Black joy is more than that. It is Black people's resolve in the face of oppression that grief needs to be the dominant attitude or disposition. Black joy is the love, collegiality, and collectiveness that Black people have exhibited throughout history. Black joy resists the notion that Black people are unworthy and subhuman. It is what makes Black culture, Black culture. Black joy through Black history is defiant. Without Black joy, we cannot define Black humanity. So I want to give a shout out to Dr. LeGarrette King for this wonderful, powerful, profound definition of Black joy. I'm not sure if he's on this evening, but some of us nerds have been going to Black Saturday School with Dr. King, and he has been feeding our souls on so many different levels. So I shade to this whole definition for me. Oh, I'm sorry, I went to the panel again, sorry. All right. All right, so we've now talked about Black joy, and we want to tie that into Afrofuturism. Again, we want to define what that looks like. And this is just a very short meaning for it because it encompasses so much. It has so many layers to it that this one sentence doesn't really do it justice, but we're going to work with it for tonight. Afrofuturism, a movement in literature, music, art, etc., featuring futuristic or science fiction themes, which incorporates elements of Black history and culture. But I also want to add that, again, despite what they told us our narrative is, we take that and we define who we are so that we write our own narratives for ourselves. So it's a layered approach. So study this picture for a moment. A picture is worth 1,000 words. This is an activity that we would like for you to engage in. And we're going to do a chat cascade. You can put your answers in. There's going to be several questions that are going to transition in. And then again, if you want to uplift your voice, please hit the raise hand button so that we can unmute you so that we can hear your powerful words. How might the child in this picture identify themselves? Dr. Nye has her hand up. Can someone let Dr. Nye in?
I'm in royalty, genius, gifted, powerful, strength, like strong. Those are all the things that I look at when I see this picture. This beautiful, beautiful, and the skin is on here is blue, but this beautiful brown baby. I see my own child when I look in his eyes or her eyes.
Thank you, Dr. Nye. Again, you can uplift your voice and raise your hand, or you can drop what you see in the chat. Our next question, do you think your students can see themselves in this child? Why or why not? Do you think your child, your own personal children, can see themselves in this child? Why or why not? If you are the student, can you see yourself in this child? Why or why not?
I think I can sort of see myself in this picture because at the lower right corner, it shows like this greenery. And then at the bottom left corner, it shows like this, I guess it's like a desert look like, but I feel like it counteract or like, oh, this one side of Africa maybe, and there's another. If you decide to show this part, you're missing out on the other one. I think I kind of see myself through it because like I'm all of these things, but you can see me as this extraordinary, beautiful thing when you look at me. My eyes shine with intelligence, with beauty. When you see me, my smile will never stop smiling. My teeth are glowing, are shining, and I hold a crown in my head. It's just like you can just see different elements on the whole picture.
Rufel, I love your response. I don't know you, but I'm over here gleaming. Your answer just brought me so much Black joy. Beautiful. I'm loving that you see yourself and all the beauty that you just affirmed for yourself. I say to you, blessings upon blessings. I seen there was a few more hands raised. Can somebody help me out because y'all know I can't see all parts.
I see a Neve, and I don't want to pronounce the Neve. Is it Neve?
It's not a.
Okay, hi Neve, welcome. Go ahead and share your response.
I just see myself in this child because the features as like a black person, I see myself with the features and they're not hiding in the picture. They're on like display for people to see. And with the accessories, like the culture that black people have and the culture that they showed in the picture, I like that and I see myself into it.
Thank you, Neve. Beautiful, beautiful. I'm so happy that you see yourself as well. Karen, let me know if there was another hand. But the next question, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I don't see another hand, but I was wondering if any, we heard from 2 students and we heard from Dr. Nye. Is there any other teacher that will come off and say, do you identify with this being your student or possibly? Yeah.
Student, teacher, parent, community partner, anyone. And then how does this picture define Black joy?
If you want to respond, go ahead.
Yeah, so the first thing that comes to my mind is just like the infinity behind it, behind the eyes, behind the child's head, in the background, around the neck, the beads, right? Like existing now and in the past, right? That intertwinedness, that what was started is the beginning and what is the end is also the beginning. And I see that within this child and within this picture. And when you look at the children, like I know as a teacher, when I look at my students like that the potential is never ending.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, Ish. Ruth Ella had her hand raised. Ruth Ella, did you still want to speak? Okay, there you go.
Yeah. For the third question, I feel like this picture defined Black joy because I remember the definition. It said that it's a sign of rebellion. And every time, like, I think about how, if we come to America, they still treat us bad. If back in our own land, they come and take what's ours. So I feel like to me, it's like, oh, so you're going to come to my place. I'm going to go to yours with everything I have, everything I am. So I feel like behind her is just a luggage, her jewelry. It's like her culture being brought with her. And it's like defining to me as like Black joy. I'm going to bring my Black joy with me.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. All right, so we did some talking about it, and those of you participated, thank you. If something comes to mind as we move on, please add it to the chat. We do encourage you to participate because you are definitely feeding our souls. I see Dr. Nye's hand is up again.
Yes, Sister Angela, who do you know who did this piece? This piece is absolutely amazing. Do we know who did this piece?
I would actually have to find it for you. A few years back, being the rebellious teacher that I am, I was kind of writing my own curriculum, and this actually came from one of my Activate the Minds, which I call my warm-ups.
Okay.
I did with my students a few years back. So I would have to look it up again because I literally lifted this from some lessons I did years ago.
Okay, yeah, I would love to know who did this piece. Thank you.
No problem. All right, so there are some various quotes of what Afrofuturism is. Just take a moment if you can see the screen, and if there's anything that pops out at you, a word or a short phrase that jumps out, speak it or write it in the chat. Remember, just kind of like do some glancing. We can share information with you later, but if you see anything that stands out for you. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that. So I'm not in the chat, but liberated is
I
a
got
word
it
that
covered.
stands out for me.
Mhm. I got to cover, Angie. People saying Black folks doing Black things.
Yes,
Interrogates tradition.
yes,
Affirming.
yes,
Liberation, someone said.
yes, yes, yes. Ancestral identity.
Oh, I'm loving somebody just wrote that in the chat. Ancestral in the present.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Cool.
Assertion that Black people exist in the future. Exactly. Afrofuturism is most valuable in question form, not canonized answers. Wow.
Yes. Yes. Okay. All right, I'm gonna move on. All right, so when we are educators for the school district of Philadelphia, so there is a focus on education in this presentation. We've talked about Black joy and what that means. We talked about Afrofuturism and what that means. So how do we tie that into education, and really what is the purpose of education? So just my sidebar, that education and schooling are completely two different things. But I want to just stick with as Karen likes to tell me, that how I love Uncle Jimmy. Brother James Baldwin has a Talk to Teachers that was written in 1963. And he gives a purpose of education that I want to share with you if you haven't heard it. The purpose of education, finally, is to create in a person the ability to look at the world for himself, to make his own decisions. What societies really ideally want is citizenry, which will simply obey the rules of society. If a society succeeds in this, that society is about to perish. The obligation of anyone who thinks of himself as responsible is to examine society and try to change and fight it at no matter what risk. This is the only hope that society has. This is the only way society changes. So you're saying, like, well, sis, what this got to do with Black joy, and what does this have to do with Afrofuturism? Well, the purpose of education is to help for me to find who I am, to know who I am. I have to be able to do that in order to question and think about what society is bringing to the table, or what you're forcing me to see, in order for me to have some discernment about what is actually happening to me, in order for me to examine the society in which I live in. Well, Black joy and Afrofuturism is about creating that identity as an act of resistance so that I can do this examination. So for me, James Baldwin's definition of the purpose of education is aligned just to that, because I need to understand me, to be able to understand where I come from and who is telling the narrative, or so that I can think for myself to get to that place. So that's my tie-in for this. Again, any questions or comments, definitely put them in the chat.
Yeah, I just want to add to that, that we really believe that quote is the purpose for this work. It is the grounding, that foundation for why we need to make changes in the way we present our content to our students, and the things that we need to uplift in the classroom, so that they can, understand that this system, they can overcome the system, and that they could be prepared for the future.
All right, so we're going to start looking at identity, that's active resistance. So that, again, to tie into our purpose of this work. So in part one, we're looking at how do we affirm who we are, uplift and affirm students or identity. So in this presentation, you may see students or children interchangeably, depending on your space so you can be the student, or you can be the teacher, or you could be the parent. Just know that, again, student could be interchanged here for the purposes of this presentation. And then the second segment will look at healing and to promoting self-love and empowerment. So when we talk about affirming, we are looking to increase liberatory practices, because education should be about getting free. And if we are talking about getting free, we need to define the purposes of Black students' lives beyond the terror and the chaos. So what I mean is, history doesn't start in slavery for Black people. Once we start there, how can we possibly be affirming the students or the children standing in front of us if that's all we see to start at? So again, define the purpose of Black children beyond the traumatic, dismal ways that we so often see within our classrooms, in our textbooks, on the news, in articles, and just in this American culture. Affirm students by engaging them to see the possibilities of their lives. I don't know about you, but many of us have probably had some experience. And as a third grader, unfortunately, I experienced racism very young. From first grade, I didn't have vocabulary for it, but by third grade, I knew exactly what it was and could speak on it. So if you already have limited my possibilities in my life as a third grader, what does that mean for me? How do I even see what I could be? How can I see into my existence? So it's super important that we are able to engage our students further than what you think they are or what society has told you that we are. And affirming means transforming the way Black students speak themselves into existence, into the world. A few slides back, Nevaeh and Ruth Ella spoke some affirming words for themselves and how they can see themselves in that beautiful brown child that was presented in the artwork. And whoever is nourishing their spirit, to their parents, to their teachers, to their loved ones, for affirming that type of beauty and confidence in them, keep doing it. I just absolutely was so joyful that they were able to speak of themselves in that way. However, sadly, many of our students cannot speak in that manner. So it is our responsibility. It is our responsibility to make sure that we can do that. Restore the identity and language and culture of the students, and not by what, again, society has told us, but by who they really are. So if you are an educator and you don't know much, you have to then be able to, don't just be like, we don't need a savior. And if you're going to be an ally to the point where you advocate. But that ally, not only you're advocating, you also have to go back and learn so that you can not just look at your own biases, but go and learn from others. Read, learn, take classes from people that can help you to understand who the students are in front of you so that you're able to restore and bring restoration to their lives. I think I seen Dr. Nye's hand.
Correct. Dr.
Yeah.
Nye?
Yes, I just wanted to add to that, Sister Angela, when you think about the school setting, right? And where are those places in the school setting where this affirming should happen, right? I think it should happen in every space in the school setting. But I think back to my own schooling and where those places of affirmation came from. And it came from my African dance classes. So I just happened to major in African dance in high school, but that was the place where my identity was affirmed. Where I would have loved for that identity to be affirmed was in my English class. So it didn't exist in my English class. I was being affirmed in my dance class and showing up in an English class that didn't even see me. So I think as educators, we have to begin to think about where are the spaces in our schools where our young people can be affirmed for who they are and what they're showing up in the school space as.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And can I share as well?
Yes,
So
please.
for me, as a parent, I want to speak on behalf as a parent because I'm an educator in the school district, but I'm also a parent. And last year, when the students were in the pandemic, was really rough for my two children because they are very social. And I heard a lot of that affirmation happen in the community meeting time. And it meant a world to me when I heard my children stating affirmations every day. I needed to be affirmed. I needed to hear their voices, and it brought me a lot of joy. So I want to say that we do have space in our time, our daily schedule to be able to affirm our children. We just got to know the ways to do it and what we should be saying to our students.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you, Karen. Anyone else? Okay. So what does that mean? We talked about affirming, but in which ways do we do that? So empower Black students to thrive despite the chaos, because we all went through something, right? So for me, that might be being a little bit vulnerable, sharing some things about myself that helped me move past some chaos to where I'm at now, right? So sometimes we have these lines where, I don't want to, I'm just a professional, I'm here to teach content. No, you're here to teach students, and they learn from you because they watch you. They need that space to be able to say, you know what, I messed up. I was just involved in this, or this just happened to me, but I'm looking for ways to transform from that mess, right? To come better. So again, as Dr. Nas said, creating spaces where you can empower them to do that in your classes. Ensure that they see themselves in learning spaces, regardless of the content. So Dr. Nye asked me about an art picture, and I told her I took it from some lessons I did a few years back, because I had one whole unit for marking period on like Black joy and Afrofuturism. No, it wasn't in the curriculum framework, but it's important because when I look at the students in front of me, I need to nurture them. I need to be able to hold them to high standards, but be able to affirm them in their spaces, right? Promote culturally responsive literacies. So which is your material that teachers are putting in front of your children, are the materials that teachers are putting in front of you students, and teachers, the material you put in front of children, does it look like the students that you're teaching? Because is it only tragic, chaotic stuff? We need to be examining what that looks like and making sure that it is very much intentional about what materials we bring to the table for our children, and what does that mean for affirming their identities. Create safe, liberating spaces. That means creating relationships, people. That means that being able to have a space where when stuff is just too heavy, I can open up and let go. Be able to disrupt and dismantle oppressive curriculum, policies, and practices. I introduced myself as a revolutionary educator because I'm very much intentional about disrupting and dismantling oppressive curriculum, policies, and practices. I have to be able to walk my talk and be able to sleep with myself at night, accentuate their gifts to strengthen their potential. I'm listening to Ruth Ella a few times in Nevaeh. Apparently, they have some strengths that they can bring to the classroom. There's some strengths that they bring to their family's table. So what are we doing to make sure that we do those things? Plant positive seeds to build their confidence. Every student should be able to walk with their head high and feel good about who they are, because they have adults around them who are nurturing them. And it's not about, like, I'm just going to like pump them up all the time, right? Because we also hold high expectations and bumping them up. And you understand that when you do work from a place of love, that sometimes even when you give them feedback, they feel like they've been knocked down, but what are you doing to build them back up? And that's what has to be done, right? So when you're planning, maybe your plan isn't growing right. You re-examine it to see what you need to do. Maybe it needs to be repotted. Maybe you need to add some plant fuel. Maybe it needs to be watered so that it can thrive. Well, the same thing with our children. Be humanizing, but hold them to high expectations. At the end of the day, they are people and they come with their own sets of issues and traumas as well. And we should have no less expectations for them than we have for our sister, brother, and mother. Okay? Karen, you let me know if I got hands or chats because I can't see that. So we could get to a places where I see the hand. Jahan, give me one little second. So I'm not going to go over these questions, but these questions are here for you to start thinking about in which ways are you affirming children, okay? And we will share them with you. Possibly, Karen, if you can copy these questions and put them in the chat, that'll be helpful for, sake of time. But I want people to be able to have an opportunity to reflect as well. Jahan, you can come off mic. Can somebody let Jahan off mic, please?
Can you hear me? Peace, everybody.
Peace.
Peace, everybody. Thank you so much. This is just so powerful. I just wanted to make a quick comment because I really appreciate, the you showing us, the ways that you can actually affirm people and our Black students in particular. And I'll say just very quickly, we just had the honoring the Holocaust survivors and history. And you think, how can you also affirm, Black students? How can you also affirm, lives of Black students? And educators on here, did you also incorporate the Harlem Hellfighters in your, historical context of World War II? Because, we all are aligning different themes with holidays and stuff, organically or inorganically. And, I wonder, who also talked about the Harlem Hellfighters in accordance to the Holocaust and World War II history. And that is a way of affirming Blackness and Black identity because we contributed to that whole time period. So, like you said, is it a hazard? Or are you talking about, just the negative things? You can highlight Black life in many ways. So I appreciate, you mentioning this list of how you can affirm people. And this is something that I'm, telling my daughter's teacher because, you moving on to another unit. And I haven't even heard you say anything about the Harlem Hellfighters. You went straight to Asian internment camps, which is something that everybody needs to know. But how are we affirming Black identities, BIPOC identities through all of our themes? Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to say, how, as a parent, keep doing that. Like we have, I think I seen Ashley write in the comment that we have to demand that we create these spaces for our children. We have to demand excellence from teachers as well to make sure that they are affirming our students sitting in front of them because it is necessary and essential for their growth and development as well. Thank you so much for sharing that.
And Jahan, I also want to make another comment on something else you put in the chat. You said, I think we also need to come to the conclusion that much harm has been done in the classroom and that classrooms and education has been used as a tool to harm BIPOC youth, which brings us today to our today's issue. And I want to say how I appreciate that because that's going to take us literally launch us into the next identity that we're going to talk about, which is about healing and making sure that students understand that healing process.
And you walked right into it, Karen.
And adults, Karen, add adults. Students and adults.
So,
yes, I should say that. You are correct 100%. So I just dropped the link in the chat I really, before we get started, let's talk about some of these experiences that you guys have been already mentioning, right? There's this thing, we have to end racial trauma. I believe Jahan is right, but we really need to end it. If we really are going to make a difference, then we have to make sure that this type of experience is not happening in our classroom. And I want to show you that an article that I read, if you could click on the violence piece right there for me, Angie.
Sure.
Yep. This is just a breakdown about what curriculum violence is so that people are very much aware of it. There is a discussion that there are 4 types that we often see inside the classroom, one with just the curriculum itself and one with the experience that someone mentioned earlier. This author of this article talked about how she was asked to pick cotton in class so that they would understand how difficult it was to be a slave at that time. I mean, how difficult was that? And I want to say that in addition, they talked about like digital racial trauma. So seeing these images of slaves and things of that nature and trauma that is happening over and over again inside the media, it has a traumatic effect on us. And then they also talked about physical violence as well as verbal intimidation. And these things generally happen today still in our school, even 100 years after, the civil rights movement, things of that nature. So let me give you one more thing I want to drop in the chat.
I actually just put the chat to, I put in the chat the link to the curricular violence article as well.
Okay. Thank you for doing that. And then I just want to point out, like, when we talk about this, some people think like, oh, that happened years ago. These things are still happening now. And I just want to show you some examples of what I mean. Just last week, if you could click on it. Yeah. Okay. We had this news article. I don't know how many people saw this about the daycare that requested the students to celebrate Black History Month, but celebrate it with drawing pictures of a Black face, like mask. And I mean, how traumatic is that for children? What are your thoughts about this, people? Yeah. Okay. I see some different things. This was just last week in a daycare. These are people who are not even in formal school yet,
Jahad just said, my teacher had us do that in the 2nd grade and she was Black. And I'm just going to put it out there for, you can be mad or whatever. All skin folk and kin folks, right? We also understand that many Black people grew up and raised in this form of respectability politics. And when we were told to, straighten our hair and wear this and talk like this because it would be more acceptable. So we understand that trauma happens to people that look like us as well, and they are still trapped in the terror dome, to say the least, and they have not been released. So yes, that still happens. The chat moving a little too fast for me, but okay.
And then in addition, I wanted to say that this happens in our own backyard. If you could click on the next example for me. There is another quick article about a teacher at Lincoln High School who asked their students, if you could open it up.
Sure.
To imagine themselves as enslaved people, and then to give their perspective. What are your thoughts about that? So what I'm saying in this is that Jahan is right. It's happening in our classrooms. Mm-hmm. It's happening more often. These are just words that got to the media. Can you imagine how many experiences have not made it to the media, and now how many we're not aware of, or how many things happen and people don't speak up on it, or is not reported?
Ishmael has his hand up.
Yeah, I just want to speak on that. I think this speaks to the need of conversations like we're having right now and leaning into it, right? This is the Philadelphia School District pointing out its own weaknesses, yet at the same time recognizing the importance of uplifting these narratives that have been long too neglected. And I think that is very important that we remain vigilant and conscious and conscientious about what we are actually even putting in front of the adults who we want to be in front of our children. And then speaking very purposefully about the need to center these type of ideas, because I would argue that all children, regardless of the racial identity, benefit with these ideas related to Afrofuturism and Black joy, because it affirms life, it affirms humanity in a world where humanity is devalued and commodified. So I just wanted to uplift what y'all are doing, and thank you so much. It just means so much to me.
Thank you so much. And because of those things, I want to talk about how we need to go back to the liberatory practices that we mentioned earlier. You really, as an educator, as a parent, as a community member, it doesn't matter who you are, but you really truly have to have that belief that education is the practice of freedom. It's about liberating yourself, liberation. And allowing yourself to be free from the oppressive society. You have to invest in our children and their intellect and their spiritual growth, as well as respect and care for the soul, who a child is and where they are at. And then
the 222 deal.
What's that?
The 222 deal.
Okay.
Sorry about that. And then lastly, we want to make sure that we teach through critical care and the love. It's a Swahili word that brings us afaya, and it just means about how we care for the heart. And has anybody ever heard that? Teaching is a matter of the heart. You have to care about these students in order to do this work.
That certainly is the case.
Do we have comments? I'm sorry. We had a couple of people who had comments.
I have my hand up.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I have like a couple things to like talk about. And as a student, I feel like a lot of teachers actually do try their best. A lot of teachers try to not look at the bad side and actually, you know, deeply care or express like the Black joy side of African history. And about like my experience being a Black person or like a Black woman, was like second grade, younger than Miss Crawford, if I'm saying it right. I was like in second grade. I used to get verbally harassed. If we were watching a video or a movie, they turned the lights off. They'd be like, "Oh my God, Rushella disappeared." Or I remember one time in gym, somebody tripped me over. I broke my teeth, and everybody just like walked away. It's just these things that constantly happen when I was younger, and people never really acknowledged them. Got bullied for my features and all of that, and it's just like there's certain teachers who did care or who later on cared, but you never really saw it back then. And it's just like I feel like it's progressing. It's like certain teachers are acknowledging it and they're trying their best to change it.
All right, thank you so much, Ruth, for answering that again. The next thing I want to talk about is promoting healing. Just like Angela said, there are ways how we affirm, there's ways that we can promote healing as educators, as parents, as well as community members. And then some of the things is to take things back to what we say, this Afrocentric or this African-centered thoughts. You know, I believe that history starts with the motherland and throughout the African diaspora. That's what I always say. So if we're going to do that, we need to uplift some things. For example, children should know about the principles of the Ma'at. Yep, you can click on the principles, as well as the Nguza Saba. Some people would consider it to be the reason we celebrate Kwanzaa. And other things that we talked about is making sure you use African symbolism inside the classroom. If you notice, we have been very strategic about what we use as images on this PowerPoint. We were very thoughtful about that. We wanted to make sure that we had things that students can identify with. And one of the things we did is, yep, you could click on it, is talk about these in Dinkra symbols that come up. So we want to make sure you guys see them. And if you notice, I don't know if you could go back, you'll see them all over the PowerPoint. And each of those symbols have a particular meaning, and we match the meaning up with the slides that we were working on. Other things that we want you guys to know that you can do is that you could commit to teaching truth. I know most of you already know about the Zen project, as well as talking about griots and storytelling. There's a wealth of things that you could basically speak up in front of class. And we provided a lot of resources for you and links in the chat so that you can do that. But we do have a little activity that will promote healing. We would like for you guys to participate. Now, I know this big thing right now is called, the Wordle. Everybody talks about this Wordle thing. I don't really know what a Wordle is, but I do know that I'm a nerd and I can kind of figure out an activity that makes sure to demonstrate what our goals are, which is to heal. So I have a project for you guys, okay? It is called a Nerdle. And it is set up in a Google slide, and we're going to give you the directions. I'll just drop that in the chat. And basically what you guys are going to have to do is go to that website where the symbols are listed. And we want you guys to try to figure out the meaning of the symbols that are presented there on there. And we're going to give you, okay, thank you. We'll make sure we get the access. All right. And we're going to make sure that we're going to give you some time, and we're going to show you another way to implement healing through through music, which we're going to play an article. I want to make sure that everyone has access, and then we'll start this timer, and let's see who's the first person to figure out this Nerdle, because we are going to give about a book away that we use today for our resources to the person who actually completes it within the first 5 minutes.
They need access to
Okay, I'll fix it. Yep, I'll fix it now. You could go ahead and play the music and I'll go ahead and fix it.
Okay.
You're broken down and tired of living life on the merry-go-round, and you can't find a fighter, but I see it in you, so we gon' walk it out. Move mountains, we gon' walk it out and move mountains. And I'll rise like the day. I'll rise unafraid. I'll rise up, and I do it 1,000 times again. And I'll rise up, I like the waves. I'll rise up, in spite of the ache. I'll rise up, and I do it 1,000 times again. The silence isn't quiet, and it feels like it's getting hard to breathe. And I know you feel like dying, but I promise we'll take the world to its feet. Move mountains, bring it to its feet. Move mountains. And I'll rise up, I'll rise like the day. I'll rise up, I'll rise unafraid. I'll rise up, and I do it 1,000 times again. That we have each other, and for that we have each other. And we will rise, we will rise, we will rise. Oh, we'll rise. I'll rise up, rise like the day. I'll rise up, in spite of the ache. I will rise 1,000 times again. And we'll rise up.
Okay, did we get anybody to solve the nerdle at all? Let's see, anybody could raise their hand and figure it out. All right, looks like Ruth. Ruth, you figured it out? You want to tell us what it says?
I think I did. So based on the first sign, I think it's peace and harmony. And based on the second sign, if I can find it again, humility and strength.
You got it.
Got it.
Excellent. Yay.
Yes.
Good job. Good job. Good job. Good job. That's excellent. We wanted to make sure we not only showed you these symbols, but how powerful they can be. This healing process is about, again, those ideas about what we just mentioned in this particular activity. I have another hand up. Is it
And Ruth,
Marcellus?
you said Ruthella, the first person gets a prize.
Can you send us your contact information so we could send your book in the mail? And that book, by the way, is called Young, Gifted, and Black. So thank you. I had another hand. Marcellus, did you want to make a comment? One more time, Marcellus, are you there? One. All right.
Yes, Ruthella, you can here's my email address. You can send it there, and then we'll make sure that we get your book sent out to you. I just put my email address in the chat for you. Okay.
You're broken down and
That's what's happening.
I think Marcellus has his hand raised. One more time, we'll try. Marcellus, I'm sorry, but your is off. If you could can you make your comment in the chat? It's really difficult to hear you. Thank you for participating. Here are just the healing reflection questions, just to kind of make sure you, again, reflect on it. We'll put them inside of the chat for you guys because of time. But really, the one thing that I really want to point out is how do we counter racial trauma-informed practices and or learning in our schools? So the question is, now that we know that it's happened, what do we do about it? And how can we promote healing amongst our students and children?
All right, so as we move along, we've covered affirming, we've covered healing. Let's talk about embracing and what does that look like and mean, and embracing our beauty, not just our physical beauty, but what's on the inside and the outside, and then celebrating and highlighting our accomplishments and victories. So when we're talking about embracing, we're talking about building positive relationships, because you can't teach a kid you don't know and not willing to know, okay? How do you walk in and say, I'm just here, and I've had a colleague that says, I'm just here to teach content. And that is why there was always so many problems, because you weren't willing to build relationships with students. We are human beings first. We must value the humanity in our children and each other in order to embrace who they are as we move forward. We have to re-examine how our class content and pedagogy reinforces inequity, and how we want to be the agent of change to take a risk. So let me talk about that for a little bit, because we have parents, we have teachers, we have students to sit in classes and know that inequities are happening in front of them. But, being able to stand up, speak up, and rise up takes a certain level of risk. And how do we be that agent of change or advocate for ourselves? Teachers, I get it. We're trying to be compliant. We got, rent mortgages to pay and children to feed. Parents, I know you just don't want to be bothered because you're already stressed at work and you're coming home and the kids is getting on your nerves. I got it. Kids, you just like, you know what? I just want this A. I'm just sitting in this class, don't do this work, even though I know this is some nonsense. We have to be able to stop, because if we don't, it continues to reinforce everything that's wrong within our system. We have to be able to say, you know what? I cannot stand in front of all these Black and brown children and teach this foolishness. And I am walking my talk, and I have always walked my talk. We have a book in 11th grade. That's the first story in there talks about the Plymouth, Christopher Columbus, and then the second text is about the Plymouth plantation. I was a teacher at a 99.9% African-American student body. I am not talking about Christopher Columbus unless we're talking about the truth of Christopher Columbus. So I have to do something differently. I have to be that agent of change. I have to be the one that says, the buck stops here, and I'm going to do something different to make sure that I affirm their identity, that I use my content, my teacher powers to heal them, and that I get to embrace my students because I value their humanity, right? I have to be that person so that we can then move to the next steps in our lives. Honor their cultural, linguistic, and gender differences. How many of us had that teacher says, we don't speak that way, you're not speaking proper English? Well, you know, we live in this world of duality. We know for writing, we're writing for a college essay, we're writing one way. But when we're texting to our friends, we definitely, especially if you're from Philly, you are John, okay? And we use Johns in various ways, and we understand that, and we can relate, and we can communicate that. We can honor our gender differences and being able to be who you want to be without being afraid to do that, right? We have to embrace that. And it has to be also, you know, something that we're not afraid to have a conversation about. We need to promote the ideas of reimagining a safe life that promotes hope and freedom. Because again, this is all about liberation. Yes, we are large. We are definitely in multitudes. All right. Or you speak so well, or, you know, you get on the phone and says, oh, you sound white. I thought you was white. And, you know, that roles that we play. We have to find ways to embrace. That means by appreciating students' cultures and their differences they bring to the classroom, because we should not be bestowing our values on our students as if they come with none, or extort, you know, making sure that Thanksgiving, I'm just using as an example, is the way my family does it and not the way your family does it, because a lot of that happens, right? So we have to be able to accept students who they are. And in that relationships, I get to hear about their culture. I get to hear about their differences. I get to learn from them, because education is reciprocal. It's not a one-sided, you know, relationship. Encouraged by building connections to their culture. So Jahan talked about the Harlem Hellfighters as a way to affirm Blackness in talking about the Jewish Holocaust. So let's build those connections. So again, those students can see themselves and we can embrace one another in that context. Because as Ishmael said, what's good for us is good for all of humanity. Introduce, teach, and discuss the contributions of Black people throughout the world. And I want to be clear on this. No disrespect to Dr. King, Rosa Parks, Frederick Douglass, but y'all know, I know y'all know, but y'all know there's so many more that we can embrace and bring up, right? And that we can talk about and what that looks like. So there's a guy named Jimmy Winkfield. My nephew, who is 10, loves to go horseback riding, and he enjoys that, right? And I know, and I'm using air quotes, sometimes that's not a Black thing, but there are Black equestrians out there. There are Black jockeys out there. We got urban cowboys out there. So we want to make sure that we bring them up as well. Provide ways for Black students to reclaim self-esteem, self-beauty, and self-love, as if a violent cultural, you know, against a violent cultural alienation and dislocation did not occur. So I have my locks that I love, But as a child, I would not, because, society says wasn't beautiful, right? And even though, my family is pushing and affirming, when I went into that school space where my parents and my people were not, I was alienated and felt dislocated because of a standard of beauty that I did not hold. So we want to make sure that we embrace those things. I'm gonna go over here because I see this chat is strolling up and down. And anybody want to come off mic or their hands raised?
We had a couple of responses in the chat. I don't know if they want to come off of mute. Ashley, if you want to speak.
Absolutely. So I think that these are really great bullet points. But as I stated in the chat, when we are ourselves, we will get hate. That is proven over and over and over again. And in this particular climate that we're in right now, that hate could turn to violence, and has. I am very purposeful about making sure that my children have all of these things. And a lot of the times, particularly the younger ones and the older ones, when they were young, we had to have discussions around, why do I have to be different, right? Why can't I just fit in like everybody else? Then it wouldn't be so hard, right? And that's a continual conversation, because when you affirm Blackness, when you make it okay to be you, it's not for some reason, there is a reason, but others that are not Black perceive that as hate towards them, right? Loving ourselves is hating you, which of course is not the case. But I don't think that we can have this conversation and not prepare them for that, right? And it won't just come from other children. It will come from students. It will come from administrators. It will come from all sides. And so many times I find myself having that same conversation that my kids are having, like, damn, I got to have another conversation with this teacher about why my child is not going to do X, Y, and Z, is not going to stand for the pledge, is not going to do all these things. So I just think that we need to be cognizant of that, because in this struggle, there will be struggle.
And I absolutely agree with you, Ashley. And so thank you for being a mom that you are. And I had a mom that was like that when it wasn't even acceptable in the 70s, mid 70s to do this. My mom stood firm on who I was and what I had to do, but I also had to, my family had to teach me duality, right? And to live in this double conscious world in order for me to play chess. So yes, we have to prepare our students for what it is, but yet to continue to affirm them, heal them, and embrace them so that they can be all that they are supposed to be in the first place. So I just think this is just a part of how we feed our children's soul, but to be true to themselves. I didn't say it was going to be easy, but it's always worthwhile. Bernice said it's about letting young people know about the African diaspora in which they are oh goodness, I'm going to I think it's integrated. We agree there is some hindering blocks for sure. Okay, Karen was responding. Okay, all right, I'm just trying to make sure that I uplift voices as we go along as well. Did anybody have their hand raised, Karen?
I don't see any hand raised. Does anybody want to make a comment? There's a lot of chats mentioned, a lot of discussions in the chat, which is great.
Okay, all right. And again, we offer some embracing reflections, but the question that I want to uplift it to, Karen, if you can put these in the chat as well. In what ways do we center Black students in uplifting and empower them to reclaim their self-esteem, their self-beauty, and self-love as a counter of the violent cultural alienation and dislocation experience? Okay, which ways are we doing those? And I think Ashley, you were hinting and answering this question as well. But these are our reflection questions for embracing.
And I just want to make a follow-up comment of what Ashley says. You know, we really do need to understand that the oppressive system that exists in society does exist in the policies that were created, that we are monitoring our students in. And because of that, absolutely, we're going to have these hindering blocks and things, roads. So it means that not only do we need to talk about it in the class, we need to reevaluate and think about our policies and how they can change for the betterment of our students.
Yes, I want to uplift Vanessa's message in a comment. Racial trauma is certainly happening in our schools, and it needs to be acknowledged and addressed. Teachers, staff, parents, and even students need to be trained in restorative practices. Culturally relevant pedagogy should be taught to teachers in school. Professional development on systemic racism bias should also be taught. Thank you, Vanessa.
Did you see Katie?
Kiera says, yes, we need to hire more teachers of color who are kinfolk. Okay. Katie says, one way is not pushing students out if they have a difficult behavior, to have conversations with them and build relationships. Yes. Thank you, Katie. Okay, Karen.
And so now again, another act of resistance, we talk about making sure we celebrate so much of all the accomplishments and things that are happening. You know, I'm sure many of you are familiar with Bettina Love and her book, We Want to Do More Than Survive. She makes this quote, and I'll say it just verbatim. The truth is Black children, or Black and brown children, are spirit murdered daily. And that quote really resonates with me because I'm thinking, what exactly does she mean by that? Their spirits are broken and no one is even thinking about trying to help them celebrate. And how can they even do anything if they're broken, if their spirit is broken? So we have to do more about celebrating and specifically think about the things that we want to uplift in our students. We want to celebrate their identity. We want to make sure that they are understood. And one of the comments that one of the things I think about when I talk to other educators and I say, liberate students, and they think, you know, freedom. And if you click on spirit, every time I think about this, I see this image in my head. I say, liberate the Black spirit. Can you click on that, Angela? Click on the spirit. And I think teachers in their mind, or educators in their mind, think, you know, if I liberate someone, they'll get out of control. There will be no structure. I don't understand. What do we want to do? But no, this is about making sure our students know we recognize their talents and their gifts. And we want them to know that we recognize their accomplishments because it will leave seeds into their, so that they could plant into their future for other reasons. So I just want to make sure that we know that there are ways that we can continue to celebrate our students. We need to make sure we have representation across all discipline, Black, brown, and Indigenous people, as well as give advancement in all contents. There are so many contributions to African Americans, not only from the United States, but going all the way back to the motherland, the contributions, especially to math and technology and science, that people don't even know these stories. Our students need to know about these contributions. I saw an article by Michael Cord, I believe who it is, and he wrote this article about we did, they hid. And in the article, he outlines a majority of people who are not even known to many about their contribution to science and technology. Also, one of the things we have to do is give the voices to the unknown. Angela mentioned this earlier. There are so many other stories. Our children know Rosa Parks, they know Martin Luther King, but there's so many other stories about resistance that are not shared, about people who are being left out of the curriculum. Specifically, did you guys know? Can you click on the unknown about this story? You guys all know about the church bombing that happened in Birmingham, you know, during the pre-civil rights era. But did you guys know that there was a survivor? We always talk about the 4 little children, but there was a woman who survived and witnessed the attack, and we don't even know her story. I had a chance to meet this woman, and even just talking to her, how did it feel not to ever be acknowledged as a part of this? Can you imagine being left out of history? You were there, you witnessed it. Your traumatic experience could be taught to other people because they should know this story, but we don't, because we don't share the unknowns. We also want to share, again, we talked about the importance of talking about disruption. I think a lot of times we hear about stories, we hear about, people, the peacemakers and the people who did really well, but there were people who stood up and definitely tried to disrupt it. So share, and they're doing that today. Share these stories of disruption. Children, how children are standing up, how educators, how parents, how community members are doing these things. And then lastly, we want to talk more about resistance. We hear about slavery all the time, but there are so many resistance stories that we haven't uplifted. Why? Because the thought is that if we talk about resistance, our children will become violent and angry and upset. No, it's not true. They just need to know the truth and understand that there were people who fought against this oppressive system. They weren't just like, okay, let's just go along with everything. And if they could do it, so can we. Bernadine, you have a comment? Can we unmute Bernadine? She has a comment. Okay, I don't know. We might be having technical. Oh, there we are. Bernadine, you there?
Yeah, as I started out by saying, I'm probably the most senior person on this, and part of my joy is just listening to the next generation talk about Black joy and Afrofuturism. But I think one of the things that we have to bear in mind is that everything that you have said, I am the generation of the civil rights. So I'm 13 when those little girls are bombed, and we knew about the fifth girl. I am 5 when Emmett Till is burned and consequently dumped into the river. And that diaspora that I talk about is how we allow our kids to embrace this Black joy. It does not start with, and I don't hear enough talk about the diaspora, the African diaspora. We can talk about the Holocaust all we want, but we don't talk enough about the African diaspora to show our kids that the link back is well past 1619. And I know we love that book, the 1619 Project, but that's where it started. And that's where the conversations for us begin. And I'm always concerned that our conversations don't go back to the real Africa as we know it, so that kids can look further back, to look to the future. We call it Sankofa. Looking back so you can look to the future. I don't see enough of that in the school system. And I'm not a teacher, and nor do I have a child in the school system. I grew up in Jim Crow South, where all my teachers were HBCU grads that ignored the commons and began to weave in a deeper history about being Black in America, but also relating to being Black in the world, which is what most people are. So I think that part of embracing is for teachers to begin to teach well beyond where we are today. And I know we love talking about trauma-informed, and clearly I should be one of the most trauma-informed child ever. But I think that when we talk about Black joy, we can move past trauma. And I think teachers have to learn to do that. I don't know what you guys are going to do with your peers to do that, but I think we can get it started and keep it going.
Well, Mama Bernadine, thank you so much. I'm listening to you speak, and it reminds me of a book. If you guys haven't, The Lost Education of Horace Tate, and talking about like this African-centered teaching where we are taking that risk and moving past the trauma, right? Moving past the indoctrinations and speaking of that truth that Mama Bernadine mentions. And I'm so appreciative of you for sharing your story with us because it's definitely necessary. I put in a chat early on it is so important for us to have these intergenerational conversations, because when we sit at the feet of our elders, we could learn so much more because they were there, right? They are the primary source of so much information that we really need to honor, honor their presence and their knowledge and what they can actually feed us, because they have so much wisdom. So, you know, sometimes young people get like, I don't want to, but we have to encourage that in our families and encourage that in our schools. Bring in folks who can share that information. I want to just shout out, he's not on this call, but Mr. Muhammad was a guest teacher at Martin Luther King High School. And he would tell me about the stories at being at Broad in Columbia, which is Cecil B. Moore, when Cecil B. Moore and Malcolm X would come to town. And I just would sit there and just be in awe, because what he can tell me, I never found in a book. So we have to pay homage to our elders and listen to them. Thank you again, Mama Bernadine.
Yes, thank you. And we definitely agree with those comments. I also put a link in the chat to the Saba, the Reawakening of African Mind by Dr. Hilliard. Make sure you check that one out as well. It's a great book. Other things that I wanted to mention that we could do to celebrate our students is teaching anchor ancestors, and we'll give an example of that, and really teach from this idea on which I believe Mama Bernadine was speaking about, this whole collective idea of who we are. I am because we are, and we are because I am, okay? I also wanna make sure we celebrate our students' victories and their resilience every day. The fact that they could come to school, you know, with all the things that they are overcoming. And make sure that we uplift our students' voices, talking about social justice topics. And lastly, we have to make sure that they understand how to reimagine themselves in the future through this Afrofuturism practices. Ishmael, you want to make a comment?
Yes, I just want to veggie back off of what was just said and really uplift ancestors like Carter G. Woodson in The Miseducation of the Negro in the book in 1931 articulates the issue with the way folks were being educated then. And he was instrumental in providing the framework for folks to even maintain and survive in the Jim Crow South, in the segregated North, right? With his educational resources that he provided, because he just not only provided the intellectual work, but also the textbooks and the posters and the righteous work that has still translated into the type of what we're doing today. And I definitely want to uplift the idea of Africana studies, not just African-American history, but Africana studies, and its importance on helping us understand not only who we are, right, but helping the world understand what we need to be doing. And that, for me, is Afrofuturism within itself. No longer can we be reliant on like, well, if we just convince folks that they're racist, right, they'll stop being racist, right? And I think our ancestors learned that that is an exercise in futility, and that the real goal should be recognizing the humanity that this type of work brings to folks in their lives and the joy that comes out of that work. And, you know, I, as an educator, I get worried that that's getting lost, but then at the same time, it gives me so much hope when I see students with eyes full of wonder ask, well, what should I read then, mister? What should we do? And I think that is just such an important thing that we need to really, truly embrace. And for me, that's what Afrofuturism, that's what Black Joy is all about. It's not about fitting into the world as it is, but it's transforming, translating the world into something different.
Shay, and I'm just going to do a shameless plug here. I am the president of the Asala Philomanco chapter in charge of Dr. Carter Woodson's legacy. And if you guys would like to participate, please follow us on Facebook, and you guys can be invited to our next discussions about history. Thank you.
When you get a chance, Karen, add that link to the chat, please, so people can easily find you. Oh, but my joy of today is that we can all be proud to say, to be young, gifted, and Black is where it's at, Nina Simone. And we wanted to just amplify that. And I really want to amplify this for our students who are on the line today. I so appreciated your input today. And clearly your giftedness is amazing. And I'm loving that you are affirming yourself for sure.
Okay, so there were just a few reflection questions, and once again, we'll put them on the chat. You don't have to think about them right now, but we do want you guys to think about how you are uplifting and celebrating your students' gifts and talents, as well as your children's gifts and talents if you are parents are on the line. So make sure that we include that. Specifically, we want to talk about that last one is, what else do you need in order to celebrate Black joy, as well as how can our celebration include Afrofuturism ideologies?
All right, so when we are tying this in together, and for this presentation, we know that we start with a certain identity, and it may not be one that we want to celebrate our resilience and our perseverance and our determination and our beauty simply on the narrative that society has fed to us. But when we start to re-examine what that looks like and start changing that narrative so that we can celebrate our joy, we can then have a look into what the future is in order to counteract, again, those cultural alienations and delocations that we talked about earlier. Because that now creates our identity, which then creates our legacy, which we continue to pass on for generation after generation. So the circle must be broken, and we must continue to go forth in that process. So I have a 4-year-old niece. Hold on, I gotta call y'all back. See, she calls me and she gives TT some Black joy. So excuse me. There's a quote at the bottom. We have to talk about liberating minds as liberating society. So making sure that we incorporate the items that we talked about today, as we move forward in building our children and planting seeds of positive self-image, self-love, self-beauty, and self-esteem within them.
Once
So,
again, reflection.
go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say there's just a couple of reflection questions that we guys want you to think about. And this time we really do want you guys to participate. If you can think about this and write your responses in the chat. The first question is, why do you think resistant efforts are frequently silenced by history? And I think we sort of addressed this, but if you could make a comment. How does reclaiming the history of resistance help social justice efforts today? Why is joy an important part of this resistance? And how can you, as a member of the village, ensure current narratives of resistance continue to get shared?
And Karen, we're asking that they put their answers in the chat, correct?
Correct. We already have one. If you want to, can you see that one?
Let me. If we don't celebrate, what are we fighting for? I have dedicated my life to uplift the responsibility that the ancestors have left with us. If you want to come off from off mute and uplift your voice, we encourage you to do so as well. Resistance being silenced, fear, change of image, white supremacy. Joy is important to keep me going on this path of resistance. Absolutely. While we're waiting for a couple of more answers, I just want to uplift the quote that's on the screen. An educator in a system of oppression is either a revolutionary or an oppressor. Lerone Bennett Jr. And which one are you?
Musa raised his hand.
Reclaiming joy is a form of resistance. People are afraid. By sharing stories of resistance, promoting resistance within my classroom, and providing a space for my students to express themselves versus silencing them. Okay, yes. Theory is not inherently healing, liberatory, or revolutionary. It fulfills this function only when we ask that it do so and direct our theorizing towards the end. Bell Hooks, who also recently transitioned. Okay, so we pretty much asked you these questions. We were going to look at a breakout room, but we definitely want to give time for some discussions as we have about 15 minutes remaining. And the last quote I want to uplift here: when children attend schools that place a greater value on discipline and security than on knowledge and intellectual development, they are attending prep schools for prison. So, you know, just thinking about the schools in which our children go to. As teachers, parents, students, community members, what can we do to change this narrative? Because we've all heard of the school to prison pipeline. How are we need to re-examine and dismantle many of our disciplinary policies that we have in place. Are we more concerned about the uniforms than we are about their intellectual development? I know the answer to that, and you also do as well, but we definitely have to change that narrative. To radically love Black and African people, history, culture. I feel like reclaiming our history will show people who have been silent or afraid that there is hope, and there may be more people to act for justice. Thank you, everyone. Great discussion, peace, and good night. Thank you, Mama Bernadine. We appreciate and love that you are here with us this evening.
Thank you. A lot of great discussions. I really wanted you guys to have some time to talk it out with each other, but we are running short on time because this conversation is so powerful and so much needed that it's okay. We would rather you guys talk it, answer your questions, and we want to give you some time for some things. We just want to go over a couple of resources, and I'll read this quote. It says, if you want to go quickly, go alone. But if you want to go far, we go together, which is an African proverb. Yes. Knowledge is a garden, and if it isn't cultivated, you can't harvest it or grow anything. And so again, our purpose here tonight was to sow some seeds, and then for you to take this information and apply it in your daily life, and as an educator, as a parent, as a student, and then to also sow those seeds in other people as well. And so we just want to share some resources really quick that we want to uplift that we use to for this presentation and that we highly recommend. We know the School District of Philadelphia is really creating this framework around cultivating genius, and Dr. Gholdy Muhammad work is instrumental for our instructional piece. So we want to make sure people understand why that work is so necessary. Here's a quote from her book. She says, students need spaces.
I'm sorry.
I can read it. Students need spaces to name and critique injustices to help them ultimately develop the agency to build a better world. As long as oppression is present in the world, young people need a pedagogy that nurtures criticality. And that leads us right up to the next thing.
And hopefully you had the opportunity, if you are an STP member, to join Dr. Gholdy Muhammad, Dr. Kamika Royal, Dr. Patton, and Dr. Oh God, I forgot the last sister's name. They did a presentation on Friday as one of our professional developments. So hopefully you were able to listen to the very powerful presentation brought on by my other colleague who's online, Sister Elizabeth Wesley. Yeah, so we will share some of these things with you, but this is from Cultivating Genius. She looks at 5 pursuits: identity, skill, intellect, criticality, and joy. And this is one using Stevie Wonder's song Overjoy. We could definitely share this with you as it was shared with the world already. So this is a one way that you can do that. If you are a K-3 teacher in school district of Philadelphia and you teach ELA, the school district has lessons that are directly connected to cultivating genius, and they are broken down by these 5 pursuits as well. Mm-hmm. And Karen shows us some examples. Mm-hmm. And this is the kindergarten, writing your name, and how it ties into ELA, math, science, and social studies. Example 2, what is your life's blueprint? Again, looking at the 5 pursuits, and use it for a few subjects.
And the hope is that you guys will become so familiar with that framework that you will activate it in your own practice and use those questions to sort of generate some ideas about how you can, front load this to your students. Lastly, go ahead, you go ahead.
I was just saying, some essential questions that you could use for literature. And I have used these questions in various forms in my pedagogical practice. So what roles do fictional writing or poetry, lyrics play in articulating Black resistance from the past to today? And then how can fiction or poetry, lyrics play a role in envisioning Black liberation and Black empowerment in an oppressive reality? So you can provide text, and you can center around these essential questions. So when you're choosing text, you want to choose text that will allow you to do this as well. Tell your story, tell you all your stories. And thank goodness that we had Mama Octavia Butler to tell many of her stories. So if you're not familiar with the writings of Octavia Butler, you are doing yourself a misjustice. So we share Octavia Butler with you. And go ahead, Karen.
All right, and then we end with our anchor ancestors. So, and I just found this out. Did you know that in 1920, W.E. Du Bois wrote an early example of a Black speculative fiction? This short story appeared as the final entry in a collection of works entitled Dark Water, Voices from Within the Veil. I was just blown away with this idea that W.D. already thought about Afrofuturism and what we look like in his world in the future. And it's just an incredible tie into what we talked about today. So just some knowledge. And that's what we call an anchor ancestor, making sure we begin to tell us who we relate to. Like we know how we talked about Betty Davis and we honored her, and then end with the anchor ancestor so that students will know about facts that they are not familiar with.
So we have some references, and again, we will share this information with you where we were pulling information from. Here again are some Afrofuturistic books that you may share with some students or yourself as well. Again, some more references, and we want to give many, many, many thanks for you joining us for these couple of hours this evening to talk about Black joy and Afrofuturism as we redefine our identity as an act of resistance. If you need to contact us, Karen and our information is on the slide. Please reach out if you have any questions, you want to talk further, or you need some